A very good morning. Today is 31st July 2020. There are some articles to be discussed of the Hindu editorial page. The major articles on national education policy, and the next article is on the stats of coronavirus, how the things are going on. This is a cartoon of the day which clearly shows that government is more focusing upon the Rafale deal rather than the corona vaccine, which is most essential. I welcome you all to Wifi study Karo. I am Prashanth. The first article is on education policy that is sweeping in its vision. So this article was penned by the IIT Madras director Bhaskar Ramurthy sir. The National Education Policy 2020 provides the ingredients and the right recipe, but what we make it depends on us. In approving the National Education Policy 2020 on July 29th, the Union Cabinet had taken an important step forward in India's transition from deprivation to the development. It marks the fourth major policy initiative in the education since the independence. The last one was undertaken a good of around 34 years ago and modified in 1992. Given our current demographic profile, the stage of development we are in, and the aspirations of our youth, the new policy has not come a day too soon. Sweeping in the vision based on the two committee report by an extensive nationwide consultations, NEP, that is National Education Policy 2020, is sweeping in its vision and seeks to address the entire gamut of education from the preschool to doctoral studies and from the professional degree to the vocational training. It acknowledged that around 21st century needs for mobility, flexibility, alternate pathways to learning and self-actualization. India has faced unprecedented challenges in providing the quality education to the children and youth. Lack of resources and capacity, dozens of mother tongues, a link language that despite being the global language of choice is alien to the most, and the persistent mismatch between the knowledge and skills imparted and the jobs available has been some of the challenges that have derailed our efforts since independence. Again, the 2020 policy attempts to break free from the shackles of the past in adopting around 5+3+3+4, that is model school for schooling education starting at the age of 3. It recognizes the primary of the formative years from ages 3 to 8 in shaping the child's future. It also recognizes the importance of learning in the child's mother tongue till at least class 5th. Here we are up against the strong desire of the parents today, born of pragmatism, to give a head start to their children by exposing them to English from day one. Maybe we should recognize that between the ages of 3 to 8, picking up the languages is a child's play, and blend the mother tongue and English is the first 5 years of the school. Again, the multilingual felicity would become the USP of the educated Indian. And the key aspect of the school education is a new policy is breaking of the straitjackets of arts, commerce and science streams in the high school, and a laudable goal of introducing vocational courses with internships. How exactly this will be realized is to be worked out, given the penchant of the overzealous parents to stream their children into professions at the earliest. The blue collarization of the vocations in our society is also a hurdle to be overcome, but this need not deter us from recognizing the merits of the proposed policy. Needless to say, the policy envisages 100% gross enrollment ratio, that is GER, in school education by 2030, in keeping with the philosophy of the flexibility in enabling our students to deviate from the straight and narrow. NEP 2020 proposes a multidisciplinary higher education framework with a portable credits and multiple exit with certificates, diplomas and degrees. An ambitious GER of 50% is envisaged by around 2035. At the apex will the multidisciplinary education and the research institutes, where research will be supported by a national research foundation. The role of our college is attaining the ambitions of a GER target is recognized by empowering them as the autonomous degree granting institutions and phasing out the affiliated colleges, a unique India's best Indian beast that is neither fish nor fowl. The huge potential of online pedagogy and learning methodologies for the attaining GER target is recognized and sought to be tapped extensively. The question of regulation is that regulatory cholesterol is a bane of the governance in India with the poor outcomes to boot. NEP 2020 makes a bold prescription to free our schools, colleges and universities from the periodic inspections and the place them on the path of self-assessment and voluntary declaration. Transparency, maintaining quality standards and favorable public perceptions will become a 24/7 pursuit of the institutions, leading to all-round improvement in the standards. A single lean body with the four verticals of the standard setting, funding, accreditation and regulation is proposed to provide a light but tight oversight. In a country still beset by huge inequality and challenges faced by the disadvantaged and disabled, the NEP lays a particular emphasis on providing adequate support to ensure that no child is deprived of education and every challenged child is provided the special support she or he needs. The long neglected ancient Indian languages of Indic knowledge system are also identified for immediate attention. All this requires enormous resources. An ambitious target of the public spending around 6% of GDP has been set. This is certainly a tall order given the current tax to GDP ratio and competing claims of the national exchequer of healthcare, national security and other key resources or sectors. However, resources are never the main roadblock to success in education. If public and political can be mustered, resources will find their way from both public and private sources. The National Education Policy 2020 also provides the ingredients that and also what we make it depends entirely on us. So this is regarding the points to be noted on national education policy and some of the aspects of how it depends is entirely on us, which says the author of this article, the former IIT director of Madras. And next article is on same national education policy, a long road. The center will have to convince states national education policy benefits to all. So this policy announced by the Ministry of Human Resource Development sets for itself the goal of transforming the system to meet the need of 21st century India. In a federal system, any educational reform can be implemented only with the support from the state center and has the gain task of building a consensus of many ambitious plans. This policy inter alia aims to eliminate problems of pedagogy, structural inequalities, access asymmetry and rampant commercialization. The NEP 2020 is the first omnibus policy for the issued in after the one issued in 1986, and it has also contend with the multiple crises in the system. It is not a secret that the primary school record a shockingly poor literacy and numeracy outcome. Dropout level in the middle and secondary schools are also significant, and the higher education system had generally failed to meet the aspirations of a multidisciplinary program. In the structural terms, NEP measures to introduce early childhood education from age 3, offer a school board exam twice a year to help improve performance, move away from the rote learning, raise mathematical skills for everyone, shift to 4-year undergrad college degree system, and create a higher education commission of India to represent major changes. Again, there are also progress on these crucial depends. The program on this crucially depends on the will to spend the promised 6% of GDP as a public expenditure on education. Again, the policy also says that whatever possible, the medium of instruction in schools until at least the class 5th, but preferably up to class 8th and beyond, will be the home language or the mother tongue or regional language. This is a long held view and it has merits. Although in the large and diverse country where mobility is high, the student should have an option to study in the language that enables a transfer nationally. English had performed the role due to the historic factors. There are some good elements to the NEP 2020 that will generate little friction and need only adequate resourcing. Provision of energy-filled breakfast in addition to the nutritious midday meal to help children achieve better learning outcomes is one of the key factors. A creation of inclusion funds to help socially and educationally disadvantaged children pursue education is another. Whether the policy fails to show rigor, however, in is one of the universalization of the access both in schools and higher education. The right of education needs specific measures to succeed. Moreover, the few regulations exist in the same state even now, but the regulatory process is unable to rein in profiting in the forms of unaccounted donations. The idea of National Higher Education Regulatory Council as an apex control organization is bound to be resented by the states. Similarly, the nation body for aptitude test would have to convince the states of its merit. Among the many imperatives, the deadline to achieve universal literacy and numeracy by 2025 should be the top priority as a goal that will crucially determine the progress at higher levels. The next article is on the serology. This is regarding the coronavirus stats. The virus isn't as lethal as originally feared but is more infectious than previously believed. A recent serology survey that scientists used to estimate the spread of COVID-19 in Mumbai had found that nearly 3 in 5, that is around 57% of those tested in the slums have been exposed to the virus and have developed antibodies against it, as compared to only 16% of those tested in residential societies. Results from the Delhi's seroprevalence study earlier this month found that nearly a quarter of around 21,000 odd samples tested have been exposed to the virus, and some of the densest districts have also 20% prevalence. Of around overly 7,000 tested in Mumbai, nearly 61% were slum dwellers in the higher prevalence of the virus. That also showed, as expected, those living in the densest urban agglomerations were most likely to have been infected by it. A large proportion of those in whom antibodies were detected, the numbers aren't known, were asymptomatic, and this is pointed to the fact that the fatality rate in Mumbai may be as around low, that is 0.05% to 0.1% instead of existing 5.5%, as per the estimate accompanying the results of the survey. Such a serological survey are increasingly being used by states. Ahmedabad civic body conducted one to conclude that only 17% of the city have been likely exposed to the virus, and Tamil Nadu too is in the midst of conducting such a survey. The dominant themes driving the state bodies is that the commission surveys is to check for the levels of herd immunity, or 60 to 70% of the population have encountered the infection. The argument is that the degree of exposure will, akin to vaccine, also protect the rest of those uninfected, but given the absence of the knowledge about how long antibodies that last and extent to which they protect from a fresh infection, the herd of immunity isn't a precise science and not something that ought to be pursued by a state as a matter of the policy. It is around 4 months since India got its first 100 cases, and very early in May, the Indian Council of Medical Research survey had also shown that the number of those infected by the virus were many multiples of those that were being reflected in official confirmed case statistics. The unrelenting advance of the virus shows that while it is much less of a killer in the aggregate than expected, it also spares a few from infection. Therefore, in the absence of a reliable vaccine, the vast majority of the people everywhere, irrespective of the peaks and ebbs in the daily case loads, continue to be vulnerable. The serology survey can be at best to be crude pointers to chronicle the progress of the pandemic and not a psychological palliative. This is regarding the serological survey and the stats done by the serological survey regarding the COVID-19, and it says that most of them who had affected or infected by the coronavirus have developed antibodies. That's the end of article discussion. If you are new to my channel, I request you all to subscribe so that you will not miss any updates. Thank you. Have a great day.